directly to the killer, who may be in this room. Only a coward would do such a thing. What will those closest to you think of when they find out that you brutally murdered 2 little girls? Only a coward would do such a thing.
Don't give up.
We will not stop.
Skip, give me one more time. Sorry if you already did, but I don't think we have heard it yet. And I know the story has changed a couple times, but what is Cheyenne saying? She arrived, parked where, walked to where, and we know that at 3:49, according to her story, she's posting a picture online that she says she took that day.
Yeah, she said she got there at 2:50. Originally said 3:50, but again, she said she got there at 2:50. Said that she ran into a girl she was with or knew around that had gotten there about 2:30.
And that girl's name is?
That girl's name is believed to be Cheryl Loeffler.
Okay.
And they went to the other side of the bridge, was around the bridge. The picture was supposedly taken around 3:00.
The girl she knows goes with her.
Yes.
Okay.
And the picture was taken around 3:00. Well, she's on the bridge at 3:00. How did she not hear the girls? FSG was just coming from the bridge when he saw Derek about 3:15, 3:20. Said he heard a couple arguing under the bridge. Did she not hear that? She's standing right on the bridge at 3:00.
Yeah, and that makes absolutely no sense because she'd have a clear sight to the crime scene, and she would obviously be able to hear something.
She claims not to hear or see anything. I mean, she's on the bridge in question. I mean, I don't understand. Sound travels usually pretty well in an area like that, in a hollow where there's water.
And FSG, we don't know if he says he saw Cheyenne or not.
He's never said he saw Cheyenne.
Okay. That doesn't mean that he didn't tell law enforcement that he saw her, but as
Right.
far as we know, we have no statement of him saying that he witnessed her or saw her and another young woman on the bridge.
Right. Yeah, we only know about his statement from Derek.
What are your top 5 reasons to make DP the number one person of interest?
He's changed his story. He looks like the second sketch. He knew the girls. He was at the crime scene the day of the murders, admittedly. He's changed stories multiple times. He injected himself into the case. He changed his appearance. And I'm going by things that the law enforcement said that to look out for a bridge guy. So those would be the things I think that the 5 or 6 things like you asked.
I agree. Him putting himself at the scene is very difficult. That's a very, that in itself is a hurdle. I mean, it works that way with every case. The person who finds the body, the last person to see a person, those are always suspects. And you lump those two in with the same high probability that you would a boyfriend, a husband, or anybody on their inner circle. So that's of interest. He's there. By his own words, he is there. And then we have someone else who says he was there as well. Sounds like we're questioning her information, but be that as it may, it sounds like he was there. Second, yes, his story changing is difficult. Why put yourself there and then change your story unless it was necessary to keep some kind of false story going.
But I do want to throw out that eyewitnesses are known to lie to law enforcement if they need to protect themselves. And if he was at that park or meeting somebody at that park to have an affair, to me, that's reason to believe that somebody would lie to law enforcement.
Possibly, but and I get what you're saying, Captain. You're absolutely right about that. But my hunch here would be if behind closed doors they thought that they're questioning his story, they're going to say, "Look, we're investigating a double homicide here. We don't care if you were down there smoking a doobie or hooking up with some girl on the side. We need to know what actually happened.
Yeah, flicky.
And why you were there, because if not, then you're at the top of our list. And that's where I go. And I agree with you, Skip. I 100% where it does appear, and I'm going off of the words that were used by Doug Carter in the April 2019 press conference. According to what he's saying, they were absolutely shifting gears. They had shifted gears sometime before that press conference, and now they were happy to announce it to the world, specifically to the killer himself. So you're right. Something had to have happened, or they went down the wrong path, misguided, misled at some point early in the investigation, or at least prior to April 2019. Where I have more questions is that the things that could lead you to DP even early on, they're all there for you. It's not difficult. If what we're saying or what we're speculating is in fact true, it's not difficult to see a connection here. He knows one of the victims on Facebook, says he knows the victims maybe personally or acquaintances or somehow, lives near there. He's there, and he has a person that's supposedly with him that we don't know who that person is. We don't have any information stating that there was an actual person with him. What I'm getting at is, and I get what everybody's saying about the small town factor, but Delphi City Police have been involved. Carroll County has been involved. The Sheriff's Department, Lesenby claims that they're the lead on the case if you had to pick one. But ISP is there, and the FBI are there very, very quickly. And the FBI, and I don't think even Indiana State Police are going to get bamboozled by somebody that's well-to-do in a little town. We've had early on in this investigation, per Doug Carter, his words are that over 150 officers have touched this case in some form or fashion, and that's throughout the state of Indiana. The other thing I want to ask you about, Skip, is this was new information to me. You said GBI was involved in the investigation?
Correct. Yeah, in 2018.
And clarify, I'm not questioning that. I just had not heard it. Tell the listeners and me why GBI was involved again, because that's the I'm assuming you're talking about the Georgia Bureau of Investigation.
Yes, that's correct. It's not unusual for law enforcement to bring in another group for a peer review if the case is not developing like they thought, and just a fresh set of eyes. They brought them in for that, and it wasn't, like I said, they came in and looked at it from like it was a brand new case, looked at everything from the beginning, left. And not long after that, then that's when the press conference was, when they changed gears. So I think, my point is that if they came in with fresh set of eyes, and they may have taken the bias out of the investigation, that, hey, you guys have been looking for the wrong guy because you're looking for RSOs and serial killers, and you're looking for the guy that what you think he looks like in this video and in this sketch, when the fact is he may not be. I don't know exactly how long they were there or were involved with it. I just know it was in 2018 and maybe up until even early 2019. But it's not unusual to bring somebody in like that.
The one thing that did change, though, for the state of Indiana, not just for this investigation, but others, I believe it was in 2018 that the state started collecting those convicted of a felony, collecting their DNA. Yeah, and that's one thing that I think is a little unclear as far as the nationwide concept of what's going on in Delphi and the investigation itself is, people keep saying, well, if they've got DNA, why didn't they pick up their guy? He would be one, he has to be in a certain database, right? It's not just if you have DNA but nothing to match it to, you're not going to find the person. you don't punch it into your DNA machine and it spits out a name that says, "Oh, you want to go look for the crispy Colonel? He's somewhere in Columbus, and here's his phone number." That's not the way it works. They get a DNA profile, and if there's nothing to match it to, there's nowhere to go. And yeah, one thing that definitely changed from the information I've collected, and I'm fallible like anybody else, but this in 2018 is when they made that mandatory, that if you're convicted of a felony in the state of Indiana, you submit your DNA. So if Bridge Guy, whoever he may be, has a felony or sexual assault or anything that, rape, something in the state of Indiana prior to killing the two girls in 2017, he likely isn't in any of their databases.
Yeah, and one thing law enforcement said also is that, it appears this guy hasn't committed any crimes. So that tells me that maybe the evidence they have with the partial fingerprint or the DNA doesn't have enough markers. Maybe they don't have enough to identify. Maybe they have enough to rule out, but not identify.
Right, and because you have multiple agencies working this case, and yes, they're working hand in hand and they're working together, and I do think that they've done a lot of good work, even though we sit here and speculate as to who may have done this and why it's not been solved all these years later. You have one agency that says, yeah, we do have fingerprints and we do have DNA in this case. But then when another agency is interviewed, they're a little more clear saying, yeah, we do have that. We just don't know if it's suspect DNA or suspect fingerprints. We know that we have fingerprints and DNA that does not belong to Abby or Libby that was found at or near where we found the bodies. We can't say until somebody's arrested and charged. We can't say if it belongs to the killer or not.
Yeah, and I think the time frame plays a lot into that about when that question was answered, because I think they were a little more forthcoming early on, but I think once they realized that this guy follows the case, is involved maybe in social media, including forums and things about the case, listens to stuff like this. I think that's when they decided to shut it down, because they didn't. I think they believe that he has been doing that all along, and was possibly the reason for changing stories is because he was getting information that they were putting out and changing to whatever fit him, was whatever was to his benefit. So they decided they just shut all the information down. And I don't blame them. And going back to law enforcement, I think they've done a great job. I know there's a lot of people out there who say, "Oh, law enforcement doesn't have anything, and they've done a terrible job. They screwed it up totally." I don't think that at all. Do I think a mistake was? I think a mistake. They've admitted. Tobe said mistakes have been made. We try to rush to solve this. He also said that they didn't identify an individual as a suspect early on. To me, that's a pretty telling statement.
Yeah, that's basically saying that we identified them as something else other than a suspect.
Exactly.
Well, and to really kind of credit the work that they've been doing, we did say, or Skip, you said they may have been told by GBI, "Hey, you've been looking in the wrong direction. You've been looking for a serial killer or a serial offender or sexual predator." And but to be clear and to credit ISP and those involved, they didn't seek out Daniel Nations. Daniel Nations, he came onto their radar because of violent illegal activities that he has been doing, and then they're going, "Oh, by the way, he was here at that time, and should be somebody that should be definitely looked at." And I one thing that I really get a little angry about in this case, and some people's perception of the investigation itself, I've heard several people talk about Tobe Lesenby like he's some kind of Don Knotts sheriff out of Mayberry, and that's not the vibe I get at all. I get their county newspaper. He has a weekly column in there that discusses different pieces and parts of law enforcement and the job that they do as sheriffs, as the protectors of Carroll County. He's very much dialed in. I wish people would open up their minds a little bit. And Tobe Lesenby to me comes off, Skip, and maybe you'll agree with me, and I know the captain does, but he comes off to me as somebody that wants to say more to the public about the case, the evidence, and the investigation. But in being respectful with the people and the agencies that they have partnered with in this investigation, I think he's politely holding back.
Yeah, I would agree 100%. I think I always think about the statement he made about, I know that voice. Who is that? That to me, that was, it seemed like he wanted to say more there, I think whether it's saying things to bait this guy or whatever it is, I agree with you. I think, I just don't understand the people who say, who rip law enforcement for, they got, if they got led astray by somebody, and there's, that's not the worst thing that's ever happened. I can promise you, and that's why, again, I go back to Carter saying at the 2009 press conference that we're just beginning. I think that they realized that all that stuff they had learned was all based on false information. And so going forward, here's our new guy. Here's the car we believe he was in. We believe he's definitely local. And that's in direct contrast with what they said originally, I mean, why would you be putting billboards all over the country if you thought the guy was local? They were just looking for the wrong guy. Now, why was that? I think I know, but other people have opinions as well. But they were looking for the wrong guy, and now I believe they're zeroed in on who they should be.
Well, and I think that there was a chance that they were, with the businesses and the traffic through that area would lead them to, because when you've worked, let's say you've worked in Carroll County law enforcement your whole adult career, a child abduction murder is 0.5% of the homicides each year in this country. Very rare. So most law enforcement officers and even an agency as a whole, you could have a 20, 30-year career and never experience it, never be involved in an investigation like that. And if I woke up tomorrow and there never was another child abduction homicide ever again, praise God. But it's a rare crime. And I think that the gut reaction of most people, regardless of Delphi, Carroll County, Indiana, or Columbus, Ohio, the Florida Panhandle, or Texas, or California, regardless of where you're talking about, other than like New York City or Los Angeles or Chicago, most people, the gut reaction is it had to be somebody that came in and did this to us, did this to one of us and left. And you're exactly right. I mean, it was the next day, as soon as they found the girls at noon, and the release from police has always been, we knew very quickly. Their words were very quickly. I have to believe you could replace that with immediately that this was a homicide. And what backs that up is that within that hour, three roadblock checkpoints are set up, at least 3 that I've found, where they're interviewing drivers and passengers and stopping vehicles. And one of the statements they had was that day they spoke to at least 600 people in cars.
Yeah.
And you're right. And they were looking for someone that would want to leave the area, that may have just came into the area days before. Now, one thing that we've not touched on True Crime Garage yet, and we've covered this case a bunch, and Skip, again, thank you for your time today talking with us about this case again, is in regards to that nationwide manhunt, which until the guy's caught, it's always going to be a nationwide manhunt. But in regards to those billboards, one thing that I found incredibly interesting was that on the billboards that were first put up, of the picture of Bridge Guy. And one thing I like to underline too when we talk about the picture of Bridge Guy, that is the best photo, that is the best video that they have of Bridge Guy. So to think otherwise is silliness. But they were posting the picture of Bridge Guy on these billboards, and early on it said, do you know this man? Last seen February 13th, 2017, 2:30 p.m., which I find to be incredibly interesting because we know the Snapchat photo was posted. There were two. Captain asked if they were, if they were taking more photos or whatnot. Police would know that. They found Libby's phone and they've analyzed it.
The family would know that, but that has never been released. So people just speculate about that.
And so we know that she posted two photos, and the stamp that we get on those is 2:07 p.m. And they would know based off of the video from finding her phone and analyzing the phone when the video was taken. And we've already said, based off of technology, what it tells us in regards to the sun and the bridge and the shadows and whatnot, it's believed that the abduction of the girls took place between 2:20 and 2:40 p.m. that afternoon. Very interestingly enough, those billboards say 2:30 p.m. I almost have to wonder, is the timestamp on that video or on her phone of that video 2:30 p.m. when he's last seen on the video? Because the other statement we have is from, I believe it's from Anna, who is Abby's mother, that says, Becky, Mike, and Anna they were allowed to watch and hear the video. And Anna says that she could hear audio after she could no longer see anything. So at some point that video goes dark.
Mm-hmm.
It's just recording blackness. Maybe it's,
darkness.
Maybe Libby's holding it right up against her leg. Maybe she put it in a pocket as Bridge Guy got closer. But there was audio that could be heard. And that's where we get the down the hill from as well. So I wonder if that video is, and they put 2:30 p.m. because that's the timestamp of that video.
That's a good point. It would make sense, because when the picture was put up at 2:07, they weren't all the way across the bridge. Mm-hmm. I think they were about maybe 2/3 or about halfway. So it would have taken them a little, and you don't see him in the background coming yet. So it would have made sense that they would have kept walking and going back toward the end of the bridge, because they were at the end of the bridge when they were filming him. So that would make sense time-wise. Also, makes sense. That's one of the reasons I said 2:30 to 3:30 underneath that bridge, because from what I gather from this guy who locally I know, who said that law enforcement knows that BG was around 20 minutes after Derek had gotten there. So if they know that, then they know he was around till about 3:35 approximately.
Say that again. Skip, say that again.
That
That's
law
important.
Enforcement knows. He told me there were several things he told me that everybody wasn't privy to. One of the things was that law enforcement knows BG was there until 20 minutes after Derek had gotten there. So he got there about 3:15. That puts BG there till 3:35. Now, he didn't explain how they know that. I'm guessing it probably had something to do with them seeing him leave because if you remember early on, there was law enforcement asked if anybody saw anybody walking along the Hoosier Heartland Highway that afternoon with a duffel bag. Well,
yes.
If you parked at the CPS building, and even if you left the bridge and went through the woods and exited there, the CPS building sits right in between Highway 300 and the Hoosier Heartland Highway. Okay, and you have it's a wide open view. So if he was walking from where the trees start to there, and somebody saw him, that very likely could have been who they saw walking from there to the CPS building. So because they would have seen him, they would have thought he was walking along the Hoosier Heartland Highway, but he's actually walking or coming from the woods. But that's somebody where somebody saw him walking. So I think that's a possibility that's how they know that time. They just put it together from how long it would take him to get from the crime scene to that area.
And Skip, you know the witnesses or the people that were there better than I do. So while we have you on the phone here, I want to make sure that I ask you this. There was a statement, and this plays along exactly what we're talking with right now. There was a statement that I found early on that said a woman. I couldn't find much more about this. I couldn't find, the name of this woman, but a woman who said that she saw a man leaving the cemetery that afternoon. And I've been looking through my notes here this morning trying to find if I wrote down a more exact time other than that afternoon, and I can't find a time that I put with that. So one thing that I found to be very interesting in this case, but I do this in every case, but especially in this one. We are analyzing what Doug Carter was saying at the 2019 press conference under a microscope. But you do that because that's not Doug Carter just getting up there and riffing. That's not just him talking off the cuff. That is a statement that was pieced together very carefully by multiple people in a room together agreeing on what we're going to be saying. Now, we do have Carter who does later say there are a couple things that he threw in there himself, but the basis of it is a statement that was put together by collectively by the investigative agencies. Now, I have to believe, knowing what we know about John Douglas and the FBI and things that they've done during his career and Roy Hazelwood's career and Robert Ressler's career, that those words were probably pieced together very much with the help of the FBI or at least with their advice. So when looking at words and how we choose to put out certain words and certain statements regarding this case, the investigation and such, the evidence, to hear a woman said she saw a man leaving the cemetery that afternoon, very interesting. And it goes back to what you were talking about with the car at the CPS building. Notice the witness doesn't say she saw a vehicle or a man driving a vehicle leaving the cemetery, which we know there were parking spaces there. She says she saw a man. That to me implies a single individual, male individual on foot leaving the cemetery that afternoon. And just like you were saying, Skip, about they were asking for a driver. I believe I'm going to try to get I'm going to try to get it as close to verbatim as I can based off of memory, but they said, if you parked a car there that day, or someone parked there that day, we want to hear from you. But they start off the statement with saying, we are looking for the driver of, or if you know the driver who parked at which again, we're really kind of analyzing this and being very suspicious about everything, but it almost sounds like there's at least some thought here that we think you may have been driving somebody else's vehicle.
Yeah, the exact statement was, we're seeking the public's help to identify the driver of a vehicle that was parked at the old CPS DCS building, welfare building in the city of Delphi that was abandoned on the east side of County Road 300. So yeah, they're asking. Yeah, I agree. They're asking about the driver. So seems to make sense that they would know what the car is and who the car belongs to.
And kind of cross-referencing information here with them saying we believe this person was either local at the time or has local ties to Delphi. You almost have to wonder, did somebody see a plate and it was an Indiana plate? Maybe they don't have the plate number, but they recall, it was an Indiana license plate.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely possible. I find it interesting that that's the first thing they lead the press conference off that way. As the attention getter.
And it's also weird. Like, first impressions are everything, right? Your first
Right.
impression and your last impression, and it starts off with that's the information we're seeking. Oh, by the way, we're going to be giving you some more information, which is, I'm not going to pretend to be, somebody that understands how you should deliver things in the best way to get what you want from the people you are addressing. But it almost felt like when you're releasing a new sketch and then you're releasing a little piece of a video and telling the public that you're changing directions in your investigation, I felt like, the captain and I watched that press conference together when it went down that day. And it almost felt to me like if I would have walked out onto the streets like Family Feud and interviewed 100 people, I feel like 99% of them would have forgotten about the whole vehicle parked thing by the end of that press conference.
Yeah, but not that suspect.
Right. Yeah, that's
Right.
the thing. I mean, who was he addressing that part to? And that's why I think maybe he was letting the guy, hey, this is the part that had us confused, but we figured it out.
Well, and if this suspect that you're talking about, DP, is Bridge Guy, then he's brash. And if the rumors are true about the staging of the crime scene and some of the horrific stuff that I've heard rumored to be, they say he has a shred of decency left to come forward. Maybe he doesn't, but maybe somebody, Shelby, Cheryl, or the Cheyenne, even though her stories haven't lined up, and maybe they could come forward and have some piece of information. And again, law enforcement has said over and over, just one piece of information is all we need. And then we get this guy. And if you have any doubt that you're covering for this person, if you have any thought in your head that this individual DP is responsible for these murders, you owe it to yourself, you owe it to the community, you owe it to those two girls, you owe it to Abby and Libby to come forward and talk to police and tell them the true story. Why wouldn't you come forward?
It's hard to say why they don't come forward or whatever. Like I said, there's a lot of reasons. It could be. I would suspect, and at least give them the benefit of the doubt, that it was probably innocent originally. They didn't realize what they were giving an alibi for. Now I would say it's time for them to come clean and tell what they know.
And what about DP's girlfriend? It's like, again, you probably have some information that you could share with law enforcement. And why aren't you doing that? One, he's saying that he was there cheating on you. So what kind of scumbag is that? And is that all you think you deserve in this world? Is a guy that cheats on you or a guy that lies to you? Is that all you think you deserve? Maybe you should think that you deserve better and come forward and talk to the cops and tell them what you know. Because maybe you're the missing link and you owe that to yourself, to your child. You owe that to Abby. You owe that to Libby.
I did want to go back to clarify one thing though about BG following the case, and I think that's a crucial part, because I think the post crime activity in this case it has a lot to do where reason it led me to this was one of the things Carter said not too long in a television interview, not too long after the press conference. He said, "I think the killer is following this investigation very closely." He said, and then they asked him about releasing the second sketch. He said, "When we decided that through the information we received that we were going to release the second sketch, I don't believe the individual knew we were going to do that. So it was really, really important. I think he was probably there or watching simply because he thought we were on the wrong path." I mean, Carter, he's basically telling you what you need to know there. I mean, he's basically saying the killer why would the killer think they're on the wrong path?
Yeah, because
maybe because he led them down the wrong path.
Because he pointed them in that direction. Right?
I mean, you mentioned earlier, Nick, that some things seem simple. There are things about this case that are very simple, but it's also very complex in the I think in the post crime stuff that's going on with all the misinformation and misdirection and false stuff that's been put out there. And I think most of the stuff you've seen out there has been kind of orchestrated. I don't think it's just been by chance of random people following the case. I think there's look, the guy did a good job for 2 years of keeping him off his trail. It's now that they're on it, maybe he's trying to do it through social media.
Yeah, what you're saying is, I'll expand on that a little bit to kind of fill in some of the blanks there. But what you're saying overall is that we would be foolish to believe that at some point BG is not only listening, reading, watching what he can find on TV and on the internet or these garage podcasts, whoever would be dumb enough to do one of those, but that he's not only doing that, but he could actively be throwing in weird statements, posting things like one of the victims was pregnant. There was this found at the crime scene, or one of the searchers said they saw this that day. He could throw any of these things if what you are saying is correct, Skip. And some people are going to listen to this and they're not going to like you. They're not going to like me or the captain for having this conversation. But the one reason why I wanted to have this conversation with you, and I hadn't spoke with you until right now, until today, was the theory was interesting on its face. And it remains interesting after I speak with you, not just because of the points that you've brought up and the interesting angles and things that you presented here, but also you are not one of these crazies that go, this is what happened, I know it all, this is how it went down, and not willing to believe anything else.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I like talking with you today. And I appreciate you for being that way, because so many people with this case and other cases have decided for whatever reason, they know exactly what happened and you can't tell them otherwise. And anybody that says otherwise is a complete idiot. And I like to remind those people that if you were right, then why is it not solved? We won't know until it's solved. And there's no harm in having these conversations and doing these types of exercises when something is not solved. There's nothing wrong with looking at things from a different angle, under a different light from time to time, and just asking the question why. And you've done a great job of coming up with this theory and piecing it together.
Well, and it's a pretty simple idea. If you claim that you were there and then your story has changed multiple times, then what is the reason for lying? And by definition, this eyewitness should then turn into a suspect. This eyewitness should turn into a person of interest. And when you look at this case for the last 4 years, every person of interest that has been brought to the table, no matter what crime they did or didn't do, what you could never prove with any of those persons of interest is that they were there the day, that they were there that day at that bridge, at that time frame, and were capable of those murders.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff that we hadn't had a chance to go over just because of time, but
like we've talked about before, like having you be available to people on the blog.
Absolutely, I'd be happy to answer any questions, fill people in on any gaps they have, and there's like I said, there's more nuance, obviously, in a case like this than we were able to talk about today. I agree with the captain about the basic things there about why you lie to law enforcement. Why do you law enforcement tells us that this guy's following the case, and they tell us that there was a change in the reason for the change and all that. So there's a lot out there, and like I said, it is simple, but it's complex. We didn't talk about things like motive and all that kind of stuff, but it's hopefully the right person will hear, and hopefully the right person will change their mind on what they think's the right thing to do.
Well, and with other cases, Todd Colehep, for instance, he went into Superbike, gunned down a bunch of people, killed them. Later, he took hostage, killed the hostage's boyfriend or husband, and he was a felon before that. He was a convicted felon before that. Well, everything I just mentioned to you are crimes that involved handguns and firearms, and he should not have had those. And we said on our show when we covered his case, it would be, why is law enforcement not pursuing the person that gave him or sold him these guns in some backwoods deal? because he's not allowed to own them. That person has some accountability in Kohlhepp's crimes. And it was probably, of course, it wasn't at our doing. We didn't have anything to do with it. We're two guys in a garage, but it was months later, 8 months later, they arrested the person that sold them the guns. Here in this situation, you have the same thing. If there is somebody that is providing this false alibi or false narrative for having seen things or not seen things on that day in February in 2017, you need to come clean with that now, because there will be an aftermath. This bridge guy will be identified, caught, and convicted. And when that happens, you're the next one. Your butt's on the fire next. So you're fine now. Yeah, I know you probably are sitting here listening to this going, what do you mean I'm fine? It's been 4 years, Nick. No, you're fine now because they don't know who BG is. As soon as they know who he is, that's when your feet will be held to the flames. So go tell them what you know now, or if you made something up, or if you just wanted to be a part of it because it's something and you want to be something, yes, it's embarrassing. Yes, there is some shame that comes along with that, but at the end of the day, you can know that you did the right thing, and you can know that you no longer can be held accountable because you've said what the truth is. Now, Skip, I don't want to get into any details, but again, my own curiosity and kind of piecing together where I think what your overall story would be. I've always believed, and I still do, and will until we have all the answers, that this was a sexually motivated abduction. And I want to leave it at that. I want to be very clear about my thoughts, that I've always believed that this was a sexually motivated abduction. It sounds to me like you, without getting into details and going too far down any roads here, other avenues, it sounds to me like you feel this was a little more targeted. At least one of the victim was a target, and this possibly was a personal cause homicide.
Yes.
And the other victim may just be collateral damage.
Unfortunately, yeah. Sad.
Okay.
It really is. Well, it's sad both, but
Of course, yes.
yeah, I think a lot of people, obviously a lot of people are following this case, and there's a lot of web sleuths, and I think a lot of those people have gotten things right. I think there's a drug component here. I think there's a revenge component, but I don't think they're exactly the aspects of what people think they are. Unfortunately, this may fall back on a family member, in terms of, not that they were involved in the crime at all. The source of this personal vendetta may have originated there. And I think that's unfortunate. I hope that doesn't have anything to do whether this crime is solved or not. But yeah, I think it's more. I do think it's there is a drug component, like I said, and a revenge aspect, but it's more personal than that.
Join our discussion. If you have questions for Skip, he will be available. He'll be answering questions on our blog all week. So make sure, if you have any questions about the information he's putting out, you can ask him there at truecrimegarage.com. Colonel, do we have any recommended reading for this week?
This week, Captain, we are recommending Alligator Candy by David Kushner. This is from award-winning journalist and regular contributor to Rolling Stone magazine, David Kushner, gives us Alligator Candy, a memoir about family, survival, and the unwavering power of love. In 1973, David's older brother was murdered, and decades later, David found himself unsatisfied with his memories of this tragic, life-defining moment. So he decided to revisit the episode through the eyes of a reporter. This is one of the best books that I have read in a while. It's available in all forms, but the audio version with a brilliant performance by Bronson Pinchot is particularly good. Check out Alligator Candy by David Kushner.
And until next week, be good, be kind,
and don't litter.